Well, first, I think I'll just lay out what I had in mind for what I would speak about. I think I'll talk about each of the places that I work, so a little bit more about the Listening House, which is the place that I worked this last summer, and then the Community Action Center where I interned this last fall. And then I'm hoping to talk a little bit about what I did at these places, and then maybe I'll give a few just stories of some people that I met there, and then just some thoughts on my experience at those places. So to start, I'll just tell you about these two different agencies. So the Listening House, where I worked this last summer, it's called a sanctuary for the homeless population in St. Paul. So that means that it's a daytime shelter. It's open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. On the weekdays, and on the weekends it's open for 4 or 5 hours. And what they provide is they provide some very basic item-like services for the clients that go there. So they give things like coffee and couches for people to sit on, and TVs to watch the news or newspapers. So it's often called the living room of the homeless in St. Paul because it's just a place to hang out. That's its biggest thing, is just a calm place to spend time during the day. And a lot of people will sleep or play games or read books, so it's just a lot of people hanging out.
Is that near the Baptist church?
It could be. It's right near Assumption Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And actually they're moving locations now. So they're moving about a block farther away. So quite close, still in downtown. But so that's Listening House. And then just a little bit more about the Community Action Center. They have several different sections of their center. I worked in client services, so I work directly with the clients, but they provide a lot of indirect services too. So they provide a whole host of different events and different services. There's a big Christmas sharing and Thanksgiving event, and just different awareness type things too. So it's quite impressive in all the different things that they do. So I work just with direct clients, but they do a lot of other things too. So my role at the Listening House was that I was a volunteer who kind of helped in all different places that were needed. So I helped in the kitchen a lot of the time. They constantly have different baked goods and different snack type things that I would help with. I worked at the front desk. So at the front desk they have different things like bus tokens or hygiene products, or other things that are just basic need type things. So I would hand out things like that at the front desk. But mostly my job was just to visit with the guests on the floor. So there's a whole big floor of couches and chairs that guests would sit in. And my main job was just to visit with people if they were able to talk, or if they wanted to have someone to listen to. So that was my main role. And at times it was wonderful, and at times it was very frustrating, because a lot of the times people didn't want to talk. They were sleeping, or they just wanted to read something, or they just weren't interested in talking with me. So it was a great lesson in just being available and not needing to be everything at one time. So it was a great lesson in just being able to be flexible in that role. So maybe I'll tell now a little bit about some people that I met at each of these places. Two people that I met at the Listening House that really stood out to me was a man named Virgil at the Listening House. And Virgil was a man who was in his 60s and had been homeless for 10 or 15 years. And he had done several different jobs in his life. He had been a construction worker. He had worked in libraries for some time, and he was quite an outdoorsman. He had done a lot of traveling and a lot of biking, and he was quite strong, it was clear. And he was someone who was very strong in his faith, often wanted to talk to me about questions of faith, and was really interested in imparting his wisdom about his own thoughts, which was fascinating to listen to. And I remember specifically one thing he told me was that he, on one evening, had decided to sleep outside for the evening. He had slept in some shelters, but from one evening he decided to sleep outside. And he had all of his stuff with him. So he had, a shopping cart with several bags of clothes and other belongings. And he had that with him. And it started to rain that night. So a lot of his stuff got rained on, and a lot of his stuff he had to throw away. So I remember speaking with him about all the stuff that he had to get rid of, that were his belongings, all of his stuff. And I remember the thing he said was something like, well, I know not to sleep in that place that doesn't have the tree coverage. Like, now I know the lesson to not sleep there. So even to have that silver lining of this situation was just incredible to me. And one other person I'll share about at the Listening House was a man named Tony, who had just come back from serving several terms in the Middle East in the military. He had served in Iraq. He had no teeth left, which I can't remember what, he had lots of problems with drugs and alcohol, so I think that was a symptom of that. But he was insistent on teaching me that I enlist in the military, like all of the benefits that I would get from serving in the military, insistent on teaching me those. So those two stories shows all of the resilience of these people and how they are trying to impart the strengths that they have on me. They were trying to show me the strengths that they had. And that was just something that came up again and again with these people. Just the resilience and strength that they demonstrate in their experiences. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of my thoughts throughout these experiences. And then maybe I could talk a little bit more about the effectiveness of these resources, but I'll just share some of my insights from the experiences. Most primarily, it really taught me and showed me the nature of my own privilege and how that functions. It really struck me with both my visiting with people at the Listening House and with working with clients at the Community Action Center that I have so many things that I don't have to worry about, that so many people spend every day, every hour worrying about. I already gave an example of one man who carries all of his stuff with him everywhere he goes, and that's something that a lot of homeless people at the Listening House have to do, is all of their belongings go with them. There's no place to keep things in storage space. Just the simple fact of having a place where I can have stuff is an incredible privilege, and I never had thought about all of the ways that having a home is an incredible privilege. Having the same bed to sleep in every night, having one kitchen where I know where all the utensils are. I mean, the privileges just go on and on about having my own place. But the privileges that I have, they just go so far beyond that. When I walked into Listening House, I was given this instant status as a white and educated person, and that really just smacked me right in the face on the first day of Listening House. People assumed right away that I was a staff member, that I was a manager of some kind. There was never an assumption ever that I was a homeless person there. I stuck out amazingly, and I think just the fact of it was clear that I had an education and that I had means of the clothes that I had, so that stuck out right away that I was someone of privilege. Let's see. And I would say another thing about the privilege that was demonstrated to me is I have an ability to choose how I want to view reality. I could choose if I want to interact with these people. I have a choice. I could work at Izzy's Ice Cream for the summer and go to church in McAllister, Plymouth, and live at home. And I would spend all of my time with my friends from high school and other people of privilege, and it's my choice. I could never interact with these people if I don't want to. So the choice as a person of privilege I can just be with other rich people and other people of privilege if I want to. It's how I want to choose to view reality. And only as a person of privilege do I have that choice. So that really became clear to me that all these things are my choices, and so many of these people at Listening House or other places like the Community Action Center don't have those choices. So that became abundantly clear. Another insight that I had on these experiences is the invisibility of poverty and homelessness. It really struck me that I would bike to Listening House every day, and on my way biking there and back, I would see some of the people that I had just spent time talking with or working with. I would see them on the sides of roads with cardboard signs. And it just dawned on me that I'd seen many of these people before. Like, I had seen them on these same places, and I had just never taken the time to acknowledge them. And now that I had spent time talking with them, it just really stood out to me how foolish I was to always overlook these people. And at the same time, this last fall when I was working at the Community Action Center, many of the clients that I would work with were employees of St. Olaf where I go to school. So they worked in the cafeteria, or they worked as janitors, or other roles like those. And I would see many of these people at St. Olaf and never really acknowledge them. And then it wasn't until I saw them as clients at the Community Action Center that it struck me that they have whole lives, that they have children who have needs, that they have homes that need repairing. So the invisibility of homelessness and poverty really struck me, that it's my choice as this person of privilege, if I want to see these people or not. I have a choice to ignore them and just pretend that they're not there. And they exist and they have whole lives, and it just really became abundantly clear in these experiences. I witnessed, especially at the Listening House, but also at my internship this last fall, all of the injustices that go on in St. Paul and in Northfield. Northfield is a college town. It has St. Olaf and Carleton College. So it's easy to think that it's this privileged academic place, but there is so much poverty and so much injustice that goes on in Northfield. There is a big Latino population in Northfield, and a lot of those people in that population live in a trailer park. And I have driven through this trailer park to visit clients and give resources to clients from the Community Action Center. And just the disrepair and the bleakness of this neighborhood is so striking. And I had never been in this neighborhood, and it's tucked away from the colleges. And I would guess that the vast majority of college students in Northfield have no idea that this place exists. So just the injustice that happens in Northfield is striking. But about the Listening House, the clients at the Listening House have it's a very diverse population of clients, but there's a disproportionate number of several groups of people. There's a disproportionate amount of people of color, of veterans, and of ex-cons. Nearly all the people of color that I met at the Listening House had spent time in jail. And there was a huge amount of mental illness at Listening House. And it just really struck me how these populations have been so underserved, that this group of people who have signed up to go to war for our country, who have traveled around the world to serve for our country, are coming home to be homeless. I mean, I knew about these facts before, but to see them being played out, to meet people who experienced this, was just heartbreaking for me. I would say some other insights that I already spoke about, the resiliency of these people, but it just again and again came up that oftentimes I would ask people at Listening House, like, how you doing? How are things going? And people would often say, I'm blessed. That was a very frequent response to hear. And just the gratitude of what people had came up again and again. And it was incredible to witness that gratitude. And, I've been thinking recently about things like graduate school and paying for rent in the future, and I'm so worried about it. If I have enough money, like, do I have enough money to buy a car and things like this? And I'm thinking about all the things I don't have. And then I'm reminded of these people at the Listening House who, got a donated sweatshirt, and they're super grateful for this donated sweatshirt. And just the levels of gratitude that these two people have, myself and this person who got this donated sweatshirt. It's just incredibly striking to see that. At the Community Action Center, there were a lot of clients that had come in for years and years. A lot of people had been clients for decades, and they would come in regularly for vouchers for $20 or $25 to go get groceries or something like that, because otherwise they wouldn't have the money to get food for their kids. And the fact that these people kept coming in again and again and continued their struggles over decades was just an amazing testament to the resiliency that people have to continue their struggles over years. And I remember that this last summer I worked at Listening House, but I also worked in a warehouse with Rich's company, Viking Electric, and it was difficult for me to work in this warehouse, and it was a tough job for me, and I often struggled to get through this job, and that job would be often, for the clients that I worked with, a great job, great paying job. And the fact that clients have done these sorts of jobs for 10, 20 years, and they're struggling through their lives and continuing to come to the Community Action Center, it's just an amazing testament to their resiliency. So to meet people like that was an inspiration. I would say another insight is the power of taking small steps. It was clear that both the clients at the Listening House and the Community Action Center would grow in incredible ways when just one small solution was taken. The social workers at the Community Action Center would often talk about with the clients that had really overwhelming needs, that the power of just finding a solution to one of those problems was the greatest accomplishment. Parceling apart a big slew of problems and saying, well, I can see that your kid there's a scholarship available to play soccer, so we can talk about a soccer scholarship. Just having the stress of that one situation go away would mean huge advancement. So that was just a great insight in both of these jobs, the success of a small step. And going along with that, the ability to listen and to be present with someone I learned, just an incredible gift to someone in one of these populations. As I've said, a lot of these people have been invisible for a long time. People of privilege have the choice to ignore these people, and listening takes away that invisibility, I think. I think at both of these agencies I was much more a student than a worker, and I took much more from the experiences than I gave, but I think the things that I did give were a willingness to listen, I think, was my biggest gift to these people. And I think what that gives them is a chance to share who they are, a chance to be themselves, when so often that they're forced to not be themselves. I think the opportunity to share someone's story is a great gift. To be able to share what I've gone through, my experiences, and where I've come from. I think if I'm just giving that, I think that's a great thing to give. At the Listening House, I spent a lot of time with people that I have almost nothing in common with, very few things in common with. There were some people who had come from some means of privilege, but everyone who were clients there had come from very difficult backgrounds, family backgrounds that I couldn't imagine. So I didn't have a lot in common with the people that I was working with. So it became clear that I had to talk about differences with people. It wasn't going to work that I could just talk about things that we liked or common things that we had. I had to talk about what was different, and I think that is still a struggle that I have, to be able to talk about what is different with people. But I also think that it's very important. We can't just talk about what things we have in common. We have to talk about, what do you have that I've never experienced before? And I think that the willingness to listen is a very important step for that. The willingness to ask tough questions is very important too. So those are some of the insights that I have about my experiences. I could talk a little bit about the effectiveness of these resources and what I see is still needed for both of these agencies. The Community Action Center, it's very intentional in that it generally only provides emergency services, so it really only provides Band-Aids. So giving people resources just to get through today rather than something that's going to help them for the long haul. So that was something that I struggled with quite a lot, is that we would give people vouchers for $20 or $25 that was going to get them dinner or something for tonight, but then who knows what's going to happen the next night. That was something that I found quite challenging, but I think is very important. People need Band-Aid solutions. There's a lot of people with a lot of needs in St. Paul and in Northfield. It was striking to me how much need there is in Northfield. As I said, I assumed it was this great place of privilege, but there's a lot of poverty, a lot of need in Northfield and in St. Paul. And people need a service that gives Band-Aids. That said, I think people need forward-thinking solutions too, places that can give job skills and can give long-term solutions to problems. More affordable housing is just so important in Northfield. There's not a lot of places that give subsidized housing or other solutions, so there's just still so many solutions to be found. The main mission of Listening House is to provide sanctuary for people, as I talked about earlier. They give small solutions, small necessity, things like toothpaste and other hygiene products. And another thing that I think that Listening House provides is it's an avenue for people to explore things like hobbies and pastimes. A lot of people play chess or read books, and people in the homeless population often don't have opportunities to do things like that. So that was a great opportunity for them. It was clear to me that people in the homeless population have a lot of time to spend, especially if they weren't looking for jobs, if they knew that people weren't going to hire them. They had a lot of time available to spend, and oftentimes they didn't know how to spend it. So Listening House provides a way to spend time in a fulfilling way. So I think that's really important. So those are some of the missions of those organizations.